Mike Woodson and his Indiana basketball coaching staff are putting in the work on the high school recruiting trail.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Well, happy Monday, start of a new week. Hope you're doing well. Thank you to all of my everydayers who are here each and every day, making this your first listen each and every weekday. Indiana basketball, Mike Woodson and his coaching staff in the May visiting and I guess kind of the May viewing window for high school basketball were extremely busy this past weekend between the state of Indiana and the state of Texas. Two of the biggest tournaments, two of the biggest circuits going on over this past weekend. The Indiana coaching staff was all over. We're going to talk about that today, tell you who they're looking at in 2025, a couple of big names in 2026 as well. Also, going to be looking at some of your YouTube comments from our last video on Friday about who we think the best three-point shooter could be for the Indiana Hoosiers next season, and an update on Indiana baseball as they wrap up the regular season and enter postseason play. Well, this past weekend, as I mentioned, across the state of Indiana and then in the state of Texas, there were two of the biggest tournaments and events going on in high school recruiting for basketball. Okay, there's the adidas circuit tournament, however you want to say that event, I think is the best way to put it. The adidas event, and then the Nike event, the 3SSB in Bryan, Texas, and the Nike EYBL, the EYBL here in Indiana over in Westfield, Indiana. And these, if you're unfamiliar with these, if you're a player competing in these, it's big time stuff. I mean, you are not just playing for your high school team. You're being recruited, playing on the biggest teams in the country, and you're coming in and playing these massive events where there are just dozens and dozens and dozens of head coaches and assistant coaches, and it's just insane. I mean, it really is a sight to see. If you've never been to anything like this and you have a chance to go at some point, do it, because you're going to see the best high school talent in the country. And that's exactly what Mike Woodson and his staff were doing. This was the very small viewing window for high school basketball. They'll have another one coming up in June. They'll have some camps coming up, Indiana, and they'll be able to see and talk to them and have some visits and stuff then. But you can't just show up and go kind of watch these kids play whenever you want. There are certain dates and restrictions in recruiting. But this weekend, wide open. And the Hoosiers had people in Indiana, and they had a couple of guys down in Texas as well. I want you to listen to this list, okay, that Indiana was looking at for 2025. This is across both, just guys that Indiana has been interested in and guys that could be interested in Indiana. And this is going to be a long list, so stick with me here. 5-star Malik Thomas, 5-star Darius A. Cuff, 5-star Bryson Tiller, 5-star Jalen Harrelson. All right, those are the 5 stars and for 2025. So what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. All right, 4-star Braylon Mullins, Trent Sisley, Malachi Moreno, Trey McKinney, Darius Adams, another 4-star Nate Ament, and Kyan Anthony, 4-star Mikel Brown, and Brady Kohler, and so many more. That's a dozen guys they were looking at just this weekend for 2025, not to mention a couple of 2026 guys, Manny Green, Gabe Weiss, Anthony Thompson, Jalen Montanati. I mean, so many players that the Hoosiers were looking at this weekend. And here's what's important about all those guys, especially those 2025s. We've had this conversation before. The Hoosiers got to find a way to make high school recruiting a priority again, because not that it hasn't been, it just hasn't been successful. That's been the biggest issue. You've gone after some big name players. You just haven't landed them. You haven't gotten them. And That's a problem. You cannot survive on one player a year coming out of the high school ranks. Mackenzie Mbako, now Bryson Tucker. You're getting good ones. You're just not getting many of them. Hoosiers are trying to change that. And out of all those guys, the ones that really stick out to me, Darius Acuff, Jalen Harrelson, those 5-stars, Malik Thomas, right? But so many of those 4-stars, the Hoosiers have really been in good relationship with. Braylon Mullins and Trent Sisley. I look at Trey McKinney, Darius Adams as well. I mean, there's some big names in there that we are becoming familiar with as Indiana people because they've started that relationship and they've built that relationship, has Mike Woodson and his staff. And to show up at these tournaments, sure, there were tons of coaches here, but to show up and have a chance to see them is a big, big deal. This is how recruiting works, man. It's about showing face. It's about saying you were there and watching them play. But you're also doing a little scouting as well. It's like, okay, have they gotten any better since the last time we saw them? Have they gotten any better and improved since we saw their last piece of film from the end of the high school season, right? You're still scouting and deciding exactly who you want and what you want for the Hoosiers. This is not a one-way street. This isn't Indiana stepping in here and say, we'll take them all. We'll take whoever wants to come. Sure, you'll be happy with 4 and 5 stars, but you still want to actively recruit and go a little bit harder for the ones that you believe are going to be the best and the best for you and your system and your program. And that's what this is all about. But it's about these kids showing up and putting on their best performance as well. The Hoosiers have a long way to go on so many of these kids, but the fact that the 2025 list looks so much better than what the 24 or the 23 list looked like, this is where you are really seeing improvement from Mike Woodson and the staff because they're putting focus on it. They're making everything about this right now. And sure, it's the middle to end of May. What else are you going to be doing? Well, that's a good question. This is exactly what you're supposed to do. But in terms of those guys that Indiana is going after, I mean, again, 2025, the ones that stick out to me, I look at Braylon Mullins is probably the biggest one that the Hoosiers are after. Trent Sisley, Malachi Moreno. And then I like Anthony Thompson a lot. I like Manny Green and Mikkel Brown. So many big name players that the Hoosiers, again, have been on this entire time. And in high school recruiting, man, if you're not on them in the beginning, they don't really care. Now, take out the NIL part of it for a second and just talk about the strict recruiting aspect of it. You've got to be in the door, and you've got to be in the door early. And if you can do that and continue just to be on their radar, be in their list, be in their top 15, then their top 10, then their top 5, you continue to do that and impress them and show them why you can be the best for them, why they need to be in Bloomington, Indiana, you're going to have a chance to win some of these. And I'll tell you this, I think we do. I think Indiana gets some big-time players in 2025 and in 2026. Now, when does all that happen? We're going to have to wait and see. It could be a while from now. But I think the Hoosiers, you're going to see a step up from what they've been doing in terms of commits from just one coming in. I'm thinking you're going to start seeing 4 and 5 big-time high school recruits coming in through 2025 and beyond. Well, coming up on Locked On Hoosiers, going to take a look at your comments and questions from our last episode of who is going to be the best three-point shooter this next season for the Indiana Hoosiers. Going to look through, respond to what you guys had to say, and kind of go back and forth with that. Really looking forward to this. Stay with us here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you cannot find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats that might not have time to resource to hire. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn Jobs for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. If you are new here, be sure you like the video, subscribe to our channel on YouTube. We are past 2,500, making a surge to 3,000 subscribers. So if you're a part of that already, thank you so much. If you're not, be sure you hit that subscribe button. It takes 2 seconds. Hit it with your thumb. You'll be notified every time that we post a new episode. All my audio listeners, thank you so much as well. Follow us on there. Turn on notifications. Do whatever you got to do so you never miss a new episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Well, I want to do something that we haven't done in a while. Going back on our YouTube page and on our last episode on Friday, asking who is going to be the best three-point shooter this coming season for Indiana basketball, and kind of looking through your responses, looking through what you guys had to say and kind of talking about that. And I want to do this a little bit more to get you guys involved in the show. And just going to go through here some questions, some comments, and look, some that I agree with and some that I don't. That's what's great about what we do, right? We get to have these types of conversations because we're just such a great community here at Locked On Hoosiers. So here we're going to go through, again, this is on YouTube from Friday. The best three-point shooter was the episode that I did. And you guys and you seem to enjoy it, and there's a lot of great comments on here. Starting out, Peter Faulkner says, first listen each and every day. Let's go Hoosiers. Hey, what a great start, right? Appreciate you, Peter, for truly making this your first listen each and every day. Chris Atkinson says, I think you guys are sleeping on Gabe Cupps. The kid did pretty good for a freshman, and a true freshman at that. His tenacity and very sharp basketball mind is going to bring him more to the forefront. We will lose nothing by bringing him off the bench. I guarantee you, and he may even earn some. Look, here's the thing with Gabe Cupps, okay? Gabe Cupps did a good job for the role that he had. And for the position that Gabe Cupps was put in, yeah, it was tough. It was not easy for a true freshman to step in and be the starting point guard when that was not really his expectation. He was not coming in, I don't think, expecting to step into that role and try to lead a basketball team. And lead a basketball team that, let's be honest, needed some leading. It needed a little bit of help. And Gabe Cupps just wasn't quite ready for that with the injuries and the constant injuries to Xavier Johnson. His IQ is very high, and he's a good basketball player. He's just not what the Hoosiers needed last year, and I just don't see him as a true starting Big Ten point guard. I just don't see it. Now, if he comes off the bench this year, yeah, that's fine. I don't think anything is wrong with that by any means. I think he can be a depth piece if you need him. I think he can be a guy that eats up minutes if you need it. Or if somebody gets in, if a couple of guys get in deep foul trouble, or the thing that I can't always bring up, God forbid, but injuries, right? You have somebody who is at least a little bit experienced playing Big Ten basketball and playing here at Indiana. So look, I'm not trying to hate on Gabe Cupps. I just think we can do better in terms of a starting guard. And that's why you saw Indiana go out and pick up Miles Rice. But I like where you're heading on that, Chris. Appreciate you bringing that up. User, and this is, apologies, no name on this one, but says Galloway's downturn last year was a product of his groin surgery at the end of his junior year. A summer of practice without nagging pain, and he should be back to his old self, shooting high 70 free throws and upward toward 40% from three. All the freshmen last year should make improvements. And Baco, Cupps, and then says Carlisle and Rice will all significantly improve their numbers. Who's going to be the best? He says it's going to be McKenzie in terms of three-point shooting. And I hope you're right about Trey Galloway. I really do hope you're right. And I think you will probably be. Not having all those injuries and not having all the pressure, I think is the biggest thing for Trey Galloway, the super senior who's going on his 20th year of Indiana basketball. I think he's going to be a better player this year because he's just kind of there now. He's just there to enjoy it. And he's just along for the ride. He's going to have his name and number called on, come in, play some minutes, hit some shots, and then go sit on the bench and watch and have a good time. He's not a starting guard where he is almost your go-to guy in terms of getting a bucket at times last year, that's not going to be the case. He has zero pressure, does Trey Galloway this year. And I think those things, along with what you said as well about the injuries and everything like that, to where, yeah, he's going to be a better player, but he does agree that Mackenzie Mbako, which is what I said on Friday, is going to be our best three-point shooter. And I really do think that's going to be the case. Elmer says that three-point shooting is most definitely improved, but just as importantly for our team is that the team defense, in all capital letters, is improved as well. With the athletic ability of this team, expect to win the turnover battle and points scored off turnovers every game. Rebounding should be better as well as free throw shooting. I am definitely excited about this team. I like everything you're saying there, Elmer. I really, really do. Team defense is going to be better. That is a 100% fact. It will be better. And this team needs it. They desperately needed it. Defensively, inside the paint, they were fine because you had two monsters down there of Khalil Ware and Malik Renew. They still fouled way too much. But outside of that, man, it was rough. And teams would eventually just pick us apart because they figured out, okay, they're a pretty one-dimensional defensive team. Three-point shooting lit us up time and time again in Big Ten play. So I'm with you. The team defense has much improved, no doubt about it. Winning turnover battles, that has to happen. Points scored off of turnovers, that has to happen. And I think rebounding is going to be better as well. Free throw shooting, I don't know. I don't know about the free throw shooting. We're going to have to wait and see. But I think this team's just flat out better than last year's team. And it seems like a lot of you are in agreement with that. This guy says that DeCourcy is predicting Galloway as a starter, saying Woodson has to get a 5-year guy who knows the system in the lineup. If that's true, Carlisle will come off the bench, and I'm good with that. And look, people may be predicting that. I'm just making my prediction that Galloway does not start. I think it will be Cannon Carlisle. Again, my starting 5 for Indiana this season. Miles Rice at the 1, Cannon Carlisle at the 2, Mackenzie Mbako at the 3, Malik Renew at the 4, and Umar Ballo at the 5. I think it makes the most sense. I think that's your best 5, and in a starting 5, that's what you're supposed to do. Throw him in there, throw them all out there, and have Trey Galloway come off the bench. He's been a starter for a long time, but he's a great piece to come off the bench when you need him. I don't think Trey Galloway starts, and I think you could see it move around a few times early on in the season too. I said that the other day. I think you could see some movement and some changing around in that starting lineup, so keep your eye on that. Indiana, Texas Tech 153 says, I think it's going to be McKenzie, mainly because they'll have the 2 guards that can set him up in terms of being the best three-point shooter, which I think is a very, very good point. You have Miles Rice and Cannon Carlisle, 2 very good point guards, but guards in general that can make plays, set others up. And Mackenzie Mbako can kind of move around on the perimeter, get some screens, and get open. And we know when he's open, he's going to knock them down. That's a really good point there. This guy says, I'm guessing this is Jeffrey Wang. He says, I'm guessing Miles Rice just from my intuition, even though it is an out-of-the-box answer. I like it. Bold prediction, saying Miles Rice is going to be the best three-point shooter. I'm with you on that. Okay, let's see how it goes. All right, Jeffrey, we'll see if that ends up being the case or not. And then this guy says there's really only one answer, Mackenzie Mbako, which is where I stand. I still think Mbako is going to be the best three-point shooter, but I'm glad we're able to at least have this debate. There's at least a couple of different answers that are options and possibilities. Look, I don't care who it is. As long as somebody is and steps up, obviously somebody's going to be it, but somebody needs to step up and be the dominant three-point shooter that this Hoosiers team needs. If they do that, this is going to be a really dangerous Indiana team next season. Coming up on Locked On Hoosiers final segment, we'll talk a little bit of Indiana baseball as the Hoosiers wrapped up the regular season, moving on into Big Ten tournament play, where they got to have a good performance if they want to see themselves in the big boy postseason play as well. We'll have that for you in our final segment on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. How about the Pacers, huh? How about the Indiana Pacers moving on to take on the Celtics in Boston after taking down the New York Knicks in Game 7? Unbelievable. Did you predict that? Did you have that happening in Game 7? Because the Pacers were the underdog. There's no doubt about it. You could have won yourself a little cash on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, making this truly your first listen each and every day and adding it to your rotation, listening and watching while you're eating breakfast, while you're on the way to work, taking a nap. I don't care. As long as you're listening and watching, that's what matters to me. Indiana baseball over the weekend, they wrapped up the regular season against Michigan in the 8-4 win in their series finale. They were able to hit 5 home runs and struck out 17 batters against Michigan. And now you have Indiana, who will be 30-22-1 overall with a 15-9 record in Big Ten play. They're now the number 3 seed in the Big Ten tournament that will begin this week as conference tournaments begin all across the country in college baseball. This will start on Tuesday. It'll be played over in Omaha. And here's the thing with this Indiana team, all right? They have a pretty decent record. And all things considered, the season was good. Could have been better. There's no doubt they hit some bumps, but hey, could have been a lot worse. And there were times where this Indiana baseball team kind of overcame a little adversity and really could have laid down and just kind of given up and died and said, nah, well, it's not going to happen for us. But they didn't. They continued to play. They took advantage of some worse teams in the Big Ten, some bad teams in the Big Ten, and they won a couple of games that they had to have. Maybe not the series, but they were able to take some games here and there. And again, at 30-22-1 overall, that 15-9 record in the Big Ten, they are the 3 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Here's what it looks like. All right, here's what the Big Ten tournament looks like, working top to bottom. All right, Indiana, the 3 seed, taking on, yep, you guessed it, the 6 seed Purdue, which Indiana handled just a couple of weeks ago. You have Nebraska as the 2 seed. They'll be playing Ohio State as the 7 seed. And then you keep going down, and you have Illinois, the 1 seed, taking on Penn State, the 8 seed, and then Michigan, the 4 seed, taking on Iowa, the 5 seed. Overall, the Big Ten Conference this year just wasn't great. Let's just kind of be honest here. It wasn't all that great. And the reason I say that is that Michigan team isn't good, in my opinion, and they're the 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament. And not to knock on ourselves here in Bloomington, but Indiana is on the bubble of the NCAA tournament. Like, right on the bubble. They're saying like 63, 64 out of 64 teams that make the tournament. So we have to have a really good week in Omaha just to have a chance to get into the NCAA tournament, and we're the 3 seed in our own conference. You see what I'm saying here? It's just not where you want to be as a Big Ten conference. And it's really hard when you start comparing to the SEC, which is just ridiculous in baseball. I don't understand how that happened, but they just continue to have the best teams each and every year, top to bottom. And in the Big Ten, you've just got a couple of good teams at the top, and then there's just kind of everybody else. In terms of us, though, as I mentioned, Indiana got to have a good week, take care of business against Purdue. Then you've got to start making your way through a Nebraska team more than likely, and you've just got to make a run. That's all there is to it. Just make a run. I think the Hoosiers, if you beat Purdue, you're playing fine. If you are able to beat Nebraska, that's a big-time statement. Maybe a win that could get you into postseason play. But if you lose versus Purdue out of the gate and other teams around the country, which there's going to be some that perform really well, that could be enough to knock you out of it. And that's unfortunate. You don't want to be there, right? You want to continue to play in the postseason. And talking in some quotes from head coach Mercer for Indiana baseball says, look, morale is a real thing. Going into it with a little confidence, you feel good. I think that's the 3rd or 4th time we lost the first game of the series, talking about the Michigan series this past weekend, and came back and won the series. So you're really proud of them for that and seeding really matters. So the Hoosiers got to find a way to make it happen. That's all I'm saying. I mean, you just got to find a way to make it happen in Omaha. And if you do, you're going to have a chance to play in the postseason. And Decker Petty says, rolling off a couple of W's here, hopefully get that win on Tuesday and go from there. And that's really all you can do, man. You start with game one and you continue to run through the Big Ten tournament. We'll update you here on Locked on Hoosiers. I hope we can. I hope we can make a run. I think we beat Purdue. Then you got to get that big one against what will most likely be the Cornhuskers of Nebraska and their home state playing there in Omaha. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked on Hoosiers. I appreciate you being here. And again, truly making this your first listen each and every day. Shout out to my everydayers. All right. You guys are killing it. We are killing it here on the show, and you are the reason for that. Be sure you like this video. Send it to your family and friends. Also, subscribe to our channel on YouTube. If you're on the audio version, follow us, like us, share us. I don't care. Turn on notifications. Whatever you got to do, help us out. That way you never miss a new episode of Locked on Hoosiers. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.